So thank you everybody for joining on our first webinar. If you do have any questions, if you want to just add them into that Q&A, we'll do a Q&A at the end. So wanted to share this property with everybody. So this is a market that we are already currently an owner in. We have a 71 unit property. It's just about 2.5 miles down the road from this property that we're purchasing now. So it's located in Florence, Alabama, 118 units, and wanted to just give you a little bit of background on Florence. So Florence is in itself is a really unique city. It's also part of a larger MSA referred to as the Shoals, which I'll explain a little bit later. But just some highlights of the area. One is the University of North Alabama. So University of North Alabama has historically been a smaller university in Alabama, but recently they received Division I status and they've just been growing exponentially in the area. Also, the Shoals area has quite a bit of music history. So you see there's a sign that says record capital of the world. They have a lot of historical history of recording Southern rock, country music. And there's actually a documentary on Netflix called Muscle Shoals. So if you haven't checked it out, I think it's on Netflix, you can check it out. And they hold every year a music festival. It's also the home or the birthplace of Helen Keller, which is pretty interesting. And has a Frank Lloyd Wright house and also part of a golf trail in Alabama. There's also, so this is kind of interesting, there's an ESPN broadcasted fishing contest that's put on by one of the largest retailers in the area, TNT Fireworks, which is obviously a national company, but it's based there in Florence. And Billy Reed, who's a pretty famous clothing designer, he's based out of Florence and their main store is there in Florence. And then I just want to highlight this area here. So Florence is on the Tennessee River. It's on one side, Muscle Shoals is on the other side, and I'll explain a little bit more about the shoals later. But what that means is basically there's a large water source there that provides a lot of electricity and also a dam which provides other types of services. So it's also a very big recreational area. A lot of folks from Nashville come down to spend time on this part of the Tennessee River. But I'll get a little bit deeper into that with the TVA, which is what produces electricity and manages water turbines and hydroelectric dams. But that's an important part of what's coming to the area. So a little bit more about Florence. I mentioned about the shoals. So these are the major cities, and then there's smaller towns within these two counties that compile what's referred to as the shoals. You see here Florence, which is here, Muscle Shoals, which is on the other side, located very close to Huntsville, Alabama, which has its own growth and its own industry that's booming there. About 2.5 hours from Nashville, as well as Birmingham and Memphis. The Florence MSA has a population a little over 150,000, with the average household income a little over 50,000, and half of the household incomes are a little more than half of the household incomes are between 50 to 150,000. The median home value is 178,000. Which in today's market is about $1,500 monthly payment, where our max rents for this year are about $895. So I was mentioning about the electric plant. So there's recently been a grant issued to the area for a new electric vehicle battery plant. And the reason they chose the location was due to that TVA site, and they needed to be close to that electric source. And there's also a similar battery plant, which was about a $2 billion grant that was issued in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And that's set to open the end of 2023. And that's supposed to be creating 1,300 new jobs. And they're only supplying the electric batteries to GM. So once this new site breaks ground in our area, there's multiple new jobs that will be created from that. So again, Huntsville is just growing. And Florence itself is about 6% rent growth over Huntsville. Also, the average occupancy is in Florence has been well over 95%, which is typical for markets, close to a little over 98%. And then regarding the UNA, which I just want to dig a little bit deeper into. So again, it received Division I status and enrollment has increased. While we're not providing student housing, what's happening in this area is that a lot of the apartment complexes, especially the ones that are closer to the university, are being taken over by the university in the sense that they're being master leased to the university to handle their dormitory crisis. They're having severe housing crisis for their students. So they're master leasing to, they're taking apartment building, they're master leasing it to the university and basically kicking out all of the tenants that are currently there. So if they're month to month or what have you, and they're becoming dormitories. So what that's doing is just limiting the supply of housing for folks that are not university students. You see, since 2018, the enrollment has increased 24%, 15 consecutive semesters of continuous growth. And then just in this last year, from spring 22 to spring 23, they've seen an additional increase of 20% enrollment. A lot of this is just organic and just the university itself is appealing to students. But of course, the fact that they went Division I is what's increased the enrollment in this most recent year. There's a diversified employment industry. I'll get into that a little bit more. And it was also voted one of the best places to retire in Southern Living magazine. So a couple just news articles that I just want to point out. Some of them I already mentioned here, the Southern Living Best Place to Retire, the 20% increase in just this past semester, the grant. And then this was an article that was showing UNA scrambling to meet housing obligations. So this was actually a motel that was converted into student housing. It was painted white and purple, which is the university's colors, and made into dormitories. And there's several other apartment buildings that they're doing the exact same thing too, painting them white and purple and master leasing them out to the university. There's also here some more grants that are being issued to Northern Alabama just due to the growth that's happening in the area. And then this is a major shopping center in Florence that was just sold, where it was fully leased to major retailers. So while I'm not entirely bullish on retail, I think this is a big indicator for the area. These are retailers that are just really known for their market research. We're talking Dick's Sporting Goods, Old Navy, Ulta Beauty, Five Below, and then another retailer called Field and Stream. Another kind of fun fact about retail in this area is Trader Joe's attempted to come to Florence, but the Economic Development Committee didn't allow them to come for whatever reason. They couldn't come to an agreement on whether it be tax benefits or whatever it was that they wouldn't allow them to come to the area. But if you do follow retail or know anything about Trader Joe's, they are supposed to be the top market research location-wise company. There's a few books that reference it. Market Research and Practice, Build a Brand Like Trader Joe's, Becoming Trader Joe, all these books kind of make reference to just the exceptional amount of location market research that Trader Joe's does. So again, the location of our complex here to some of the local employers. So again, the university, 1,600 employees. That I believe is probably outdated information. I'm sure the university itself has exceeded that by tremendous amounts. TVA, which I was mentioning before, already has about 2,000 employees. Helen Keller Hospital, 1,000. North Alabama Medical Center, 1,200, and then that Cox Creek Shopping Center I was mentioning before. So just get into our deal a little bit and give you a little background on this property. So this property is 118 units. They're all 2-bed, 2-bath units with washer dryer hookups. All are the exact same floor plan, 1,100 square feet. This particular complex is, I would refer to it as a community. It's really a beautiful setup there. It was built in the 90s by the gentleman that currently owns it. He built it and has owned it and has parsed off part of the units, some to his daughter and some to his son. So the three of them manage kind of their own units within the entire complex. And that is why they're able to provide to us the seller financing. So they own it obviously free and clear. And we're doing a 5.5% rate with 2-year IO, 30-year AM, 5-year balloon. Current prime interest rate's about 7.5. So we're coming in about 2 points lower than what we're seeing in the market. Again, because this has been owned for so long and there's been little aggression as far as rent increases, we're looking at about some of the units are about 250 to 400 plus below the market rent. 56 of those units are about $420 below the market rent that we're seeing in the area. So again, because this seller is just taking really great care of the property, we're seeing very, very limited deferred maintenance. He has managed the property, sort of been the maintenance, and he has not really allowed much deferred maintenance to go unnoticed. The one item that, as you can see in this picture here, that we are dealing with is really outdated interior units. So most of the units are still wallpapered. Seeing the old flooring, old appliances, I would say that every single stove I saw in the units were the original, and then some cabinetry and countertops. So our plan is to go in, put in a new updated flooring, updated paint, do some kitchen renovations and some minor bathroom upgrades. I'll show you some pictures of the bathroom. And some other kind of pluses for this area is we're looking at a brick building on slab foundation, which is extremely important. Also, currently there's no pets allowed on the property, and we would be changing that policy for the added revenue. And again, we have so my property that's down the road here is managed by a property management company that will be taking over this management. So we'll have an upgraded system for management and ability to scale and to streamline costs and to minimize the costs for us on this particular property. And then lastly, there is additional land available to build, but we did not include that in our underwriting and don't have any immediate intentions to build on the property. So some other items just want to point out about the outside of the property. So when you come into the complex, you're coming down this way here, and there's a large property here. And we have discussed and will potentially plan on doing some kind of community activities that we can use this particular land for. There's also in between the properties, there's also some additional land. So either doing some dog runs here or on this piece of property as well. Just some ideas that we're sort of kicking around. On the side of the property, you'll see that there was once a pool there, and there's still a little pool house located here, but they filled that in a few years back. So plans for here, either in the future, a few years down the line, either putting in a pool again or doing something like a pickleball court. Then on the back side of the property, you'll see there's a large piece of land that backs up to the creek. That's why it's creekside. And this is what's buildable, but in the time being, we can put in picnic tables and other types of community activities over there. So here is another view of that kitchen that I was showing you before. I think this may be the same kitchen, but you'll see just the sort of outdated cabinetry here, as well as the old appliances. So what we will be doing is replacing the appliances with stainless steel and then upgrading the rest of the kitchen and flooring. And as you see, we kind of like the lighter look to the kitchens. And then here's a bathroom. Again, we're seeing the wallpaper, some outdated toilet colors and vanities here, and showers. So we would be doing something similar to this effect as well in the bathroom. So talking about the financials of the property, as you see here, we have here the first 2 years of interest only, and then we go into the premium and principal and interest. We're looking at an IRR of over 16%, average annual rate a little over 19%, and cash on cash averaging about 7.8% per year. The target here is for a 5-year hold and either doing a refinance or selling the property, depending on where rates are at the time and what the market is doing. And our seller carry terms are 5.5 rate, 5-year term, 2 years IO, 30-year AM. The purchase price is a little over 10 million, with our down payment a little over 2.5, and our closing costs and repairs bringing our total raise to about 3.6. So just to talk a little bit about the market. So the market itself is still has a lot of properties that are owned by these owners that similar to the one we're dealing with on this property, where they own them free and clear, not really raising rents tremendously, but not making any repairs and not providing any amenities to their tenants. But there's a few properties that, and these are not the only ones, but these are just a few that I wanted to highlight that are increasing the rent. Also, historically, this area has not been an area that's been focused on by institutional buyers, but recently an institutional buyer out of Ohio purchased a 500-unit portfolio in the area and have been increasing rents on those properties as well. So the one on top here is pretty interesting and the most comparable to what our property is. So it's about a little over a mile up the road from our property, exactly straight shot up the road. And this was actually built by the seller himself. He had sold this property off a few years back. And this is a 24-unit property. So it's not a community like our property is. It's just a one building, 24 units. And that property is managed by our property manager. And the only upgrades they made to that particular property those particular units is they upgraded the floors and they put stainless steel. But you can see they kept the original cabinets, the original countertops all in place. And the color, they didn't upgrade it to a light gray or a white like we would. And they had received 3 units that were at $895, and they had one that was just up for rent, which is actually these pictures. And they've gotten somebody signed lease on that with the 4th. So their 4th unit at $895. Their next available unit that comes available, nothing is available currently. They will be upping that to $950 with the exact same terms. This is another property. It's a little over 3 miles from our property. And it is actually further from downtown, so it's not close to the university or anything else that's a convenience. And they did do some major upgrades though on this particular property. They've upgraded the entire kitchen. They have a sort of an open concept to their property. They have the very similar flooring to us. And they're getting $1,200 for their units. This is another property that's a little over 1.5 miles from ours, and it's actually parallel to downtown. And they have not updated anything. They haven't updated the kitchen. They still have carpet in their units, and they're getting corporate apartments, and they're renting for $1,600. So a little bit about the sponsors. Won't spend too much time on this, but Radlett Capital, which is my company, we formed in 2014, and the purpose of us forming is to provide alternative investment options to our investors. So the main focus is on corporate commercial finance and corporate real estate. So we have between the two portfolios, we have about 32 million under management. And myself, I've been doing underwriting and portfolio management since 2005, and also currently sit as the CFO to Fund 5 Funding Group. Our other partners are Amy and Charles Flaxel. They're a couple that work together, and they're based out of Oregon, but they're very familiar with the Northern Alabama and Southern Tennessee market. So they currently have a home that they just flipped in Southern Tennessee, and they also own a multifamily in Huntsville as well as in Phoenix. And they'll be joining us on this property. So I'm really excited about that. And Josh Stahl, also, he's been investing in real estate since 2016. He also is now full-time real estate and crypto investor, and he also will be joining our team, and also very excited about that. And lastly, we have Brendan Chisholm. He's local to me, which is really great, and it's really wonderful to be working on a project with him. He's a GP on 169 units and an LP on 334 units. So he has a lot of experience on value add as well, and repositioning properties in the Sunbelt area as well. And then lastly on our team is just our property management team that I was mentioning before. So this property management team was acquired by the current owner in 2019, and he has just found a way to really innovate the property management world, if you will. It's a pretty antiquated system usually, and still parts of it have to remain pretty hands-on, but he's found really great ways that I haven't seen in some of our other properties, and that he's managed to find ways to really maximize all of the leads and all of the different resources that he has available to him. So lastly, just want to go over again the terms of the property and our investment for this property. So like I mentioned before, the IRR we're looking at is a little over 16%, with the average annual return as a 5-year hold of a little over 19% and cash on cash at 7.8%. Also in 2023, we've been moved from 100% bonus depreciation to 80% bonus depreciation this year. However, it's better than a few years back when it was whatever, 25%, whatever it ended up being. But we will be doing a cost segregation study for this particular property, which will give us the added benefits of that depreciation. So deadline to invest is February 15th, just need soft commitments by then. And our minimum investment on this particular property is $50,000, where our returns will be 7% preferred return and a 70-30 split. Our distributions are paid quarterly, with the first distribution on this property to come end of Q2. And so it's first come, first serve. And our closing date on this is going to be February 28th. So we're exactly about a month out from closing on this one. And so ready to take questions. This is my first webinar, so I'm just learning here, but I did have one of my investors on another property. He couldn't join us today, so he actually sent in some questions. So I told him I'd read it on the webinar, and if there's any further questions, I'm happy to take them as well. So he's asking me, why is the seller selling? So I guess I didn't cover that in complete detail, but so this seller that is selling, he's 80 years old. His wife is ill, and he's ready to retire, and he is doing the seller financing for many reasons, but I think the main reason is for tax purposes, and it's a great way for us to be able to acquire this property with high rates in the market and be able to come in and have a lower cost debt on this. He's asking me how many units have been updated. It's a good question. I personally would say 0. But the son that of the 3 owners in that particular complex, the son has upgraded minimally some of the units. So all of his units that he holds, and that's about, I believe, 30. He has, or 40 actually. I'm sorry. He has removed the wallpaper, or covered, painted over them. So if they are painted over, we would still go in and pull down the wallpaper. And he has done flooring on a few of the downstairs units on his. But as far as really upgrades, I would say very, very little. I think he's done the flooring on maybe 4 of the units. So it would be a full overhaul of all of the units that we're looking to take on. He's also asking me, what does physical occupancy look like now? So there are 12 units that are vacant. When we originally were in conversation with the seller, we had asked them to lease up those units so that we were looking at a higher cash flow. But then once we did the walkthrough of the property, we told them actually not to do that and to hold off, because we'd rather do our own upgrades into the units and put the rents that we're looking to obtain. And basically the owner, like I mentioned, his wife is ill. He is just basically decided he doesn't want to put in new tenants at this time. And what's the planned timing for turning the remaining units? So I mentioned earlier that 56 of the units are 420% below market, or $420 below market. So the initial plan on that is to take those units to up the rent, not up them up to $895, but up them up to a reasonable dollar amount. And the idea is that at that dollar amount that we're upping, that we'll see about a 15% of those units that will leave. And that could come, that could not come. I will say on my other property that we have upped the rent quite a few times, and we just can't seem to get our tenants to leave because rent, I mentioned the apartment, the amount of apartments are just not really there in this market, and the replacement cost doesn't make sense for builders. And in addition to that, there's just the rent increases are really happening right now in the market. So that would be the plan to first turn the 12 units that are currently vacant, and then to increase rents on all of the units, and with the hopes that those units will start to become vacant so we can turn them. The thought is that we would be able to get through about probably over maybe 55-60% within the first 2 years. And then he asked, how did you find such a good deal? So my property manager actually connected me with this seller. He knew that he was looking to sell, and he knew the market. He knew the people in the market, and he was able to connect us to this deal. And that is all the questions I have. So if you are interested or have any further questions that you want to ask about this particular deal or Florence itself, happy to chat. These are my phone numbers, my office number, my cell phone number, and my email number, or my email. Sorry about that. So again, I'll send this out to everybody who registered, the updated OM as well as the recording.